Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, social marketers around the world. My name is Win Morgan, and as president of the International Social Marketing Association, it's both my privilege and my pleasure to introduce the 16th in a series of webinars designed to advance social marketing teaching, research, and practice. Our moderators for today are Jay Kassir, our organizer of the webinar series and chair of the ISMA membership committee of our board of directors, and Tamara Harbour, our coordinator for this webinar series. Say hello, Jay. Say hello, Tamara.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Okay, we'll begin in just a minute, but before we do, I'd like to remind you of some member benefit features that are provided through the International Social Marketing Association. Note that you get a full year of access to our archived and future webinars for the price of just one webinar. So make sure when you ask your friends to join ISMA for the price of one webinar, they get a full year of membership. So why not just go ahead and join us? We also have a new and improved job board, which I'd like you to know about. Before I do that, I'd like to tell you just a bit about our There it is, our new and improved job board. I had a little trouble with my clicking this morning at 6 in the morning. But yes, we have a great new job board you should take a look at. Did you know that you can post a job or you can post your resume anonymously on the ISMA improved job board, and you can be found. People can look for you for consultancies or for new jobs, as well as you looking for new jobs. You can also make yourself a little search for yourself so that once a day or once a week you get the latest jobs that have been posted on the ISMA job board. So take a look at it. Also, remember to take a look at our news desk, which has the latest op-eds from our people such as Craig LaFay and Julie Hens and Natalie Aya. We also have a great compilation of news from RSS feeds. If you go to the ISMA website, take a look at news and take a look at the news compilation. Last but not least, I want to remind you that we really have a packed event calendar now. A lot of people have not known that we've been keeping up to 50 to 60 events that are coming up in social marketing. If you go to the ISMA website at i-socialmarketing.org, you can find out what's happening in your part of the world and in other parts of the world for the upcoming months in social marketing. Make sure you take a look at it. Until then, I'd like to turn the webinar over to our moderator, Jay Kassir. Jay?
Thanks, Wynn, and welcome everyone. I want to remind you that if there is more than one of you at your location, we'd appreciate it if you would let us know how many you are using the chat box. And also, please ask questions using the text box as they come to you. Don't wait until the end of Huda's talk. She'll answer your questions at the end in roughly the same order as they come in during the webinar. I think we have a poll here, and I'm not sure that it makes sense because I know the three groups that have joined so far. Well, how did you learn about the webinar? You're all members, and you've got our newsletter. And how did you learn? Oh boy, am I mixing two of these up? Here's one. And then if I go to the other slide, there you go. Which area of the world are you in? We know that as well for the three of you. So I think I can go straight ahead from here and ask Tamara if you would go ahead and introduce our speakers today.
Okay, thanks, Jay. Today I'm happy to introduce Huda Hayem as our webinar speaker. Huda Hayem has 18 years of experience as a program manager and social marketing professional. And although her background includes a master's equivalent degree in business management and a certificate in social marketing from Georgetown University, she's continuing her education by pursuing a master's in development management in the UK. Her expertise in the field covers strategic design, management, and implementation of family planning, HIV/AIDS, malaria, and environment programs in North and West Africa and the Middle East. In addition, she has considerable experience interacting with USAID missions and UN agencies such as WHO and UNDP. Currently, Huda is involved with JCAP, which is the Jordan Communication Advocacy and Policy Project. This is a 5-year, $30 million USAID-funded project. In her role as the Deputy Chief of Party, Huda provides technical leadership in a program that aims to increase demand for modern family planning methods. Huda will be talking to us today about creating an enabling environment for a bold family planning campaign through effective co-creation strategies. Huda, we're looking forward to hearing you speak about this interesting program and how effective it's been. So welcome, Huda, and over to you.
Thank you, Tamara. Thank you, Wynn and Jay and Deidre, and thank you all for joining us today and at this early time again. I am thrilled to tell you about a Jordanian story that is full of drama and suspense, but with a happy ending. Before that, a few words about the USAID SHOPS project. SHOPS stands for Strengthening Health Outcomes Through the Private Sector. And in Jordan, it was implemented during 5 years, ending in September 2015 by Apt Associates International. Its primary focus was increasing use of family planning, especially modern methods, with both service delivery and demand generation components. I had the pleasure, as Tamara said, to serve as the social marketing manager in their shops for 4 years before I moved to JCAP. Now, before going forward, I think we will have a playtime, and I would like you to focus on the nice picture on this slide and turn it over to Jay.
Well, here's the question. I'd like to do this. So,
Okay, yes, when?
You've seen this picture. Now, here's the question. Do you recognize what's in this picture? What's the name of the historical place in that slide? Just use your, just go ahead and click to say what you think it is. Waiting for everyone, and here we go. And it looks like we have 2 right answers. Is that? Oh, what do we got? Oh, well, we've got 3 and 3. Huda, how are we doing here?
So I think we'll go for both because both are true.
Okay, so what is it called? Is it Petra or Petra?
Petra.
Petra. Oh, okay, great.
Okay.
I knew I'd seen it somewhere.
Yes, exactly. Thanks to Hollywood. Now, let me tell you about the demographic context of Jordan. Jordan is a small country with very limited natural resources. For example, it is the 4th poorest country in the world when it comes to water resources. Employment opportunities are also scarce, and youth struggle to find jobs. There is a high level of professional, I would say, economic migration of youth in Jordan around the region in other countries like Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and so forth. Jordan was already facing a challenge in natural population growth that you could see here, 2.2%, before the massive influx of Syrian refugees in 2011. It is difficult to get a precise number, and they are currently estimated at 1.4 Syrian refugees, 80% of whom are living among the population. There are not that many in the refugee camps. The other remarkable element is the youth bulge that represents almost 1/3 of the whole population, with the implications you can imagine in terms of education and employment needs. When it comes to fertility, we have, and I would like you to bear with me the little, the jargon of demographers, and we talk about total fertility rate, which is the average number of children per married woman in reproductive age during her reproductive life time. In this context that I've just told you about, slowing down the population growth is key to achieve the country's development objectives. And here we see that after the fertility rate dramatically decreased from an average of 7.5 children per woman in 1976 to 3.7 children in 2002, it remained stagnant until 2012. And I can tell you based on very recent research that it's still pretty much the same today. The fertility rate is considered high versus country resources and economic opportunities. I'm going further down the level into modern contraceptive prevalence, and you could see that the CPR, as we say, has also improved in Jordan. 61% of modern contraceptive prevalence rate is a good number. However, the problem we have in the issue is this flat line of 42% for modern methods, whereas traditional methods prevalence rate increased from 15% in 2007 to 19% in 2012. So what would be the problem? Well, the problem is that traditional methods are much less effective than modern ones. And for those who are not familiar with the family planning universe, I would give you some examples of modern methods, such as oral contraceptive pills, implants, injectables, the one we're going to talk about, intrauterine device, condoms also, whereas traditional methods can be withdrawal or periodic abstinence. And the other problem we have is that traditional methods are religiously supported. Withdrawal is reported by religious leaders to be the method used by the Prophet in a country that is a majority of Muslims. And the behavioral issue also is that these less effective methods are perceived as effective as modern methods and safer. So why did we think about an intrauterine device, IUD in short, campaign? There are three main elements. First, it's a highly effective method that provides a very long-term protection. Its effectiveness is up to 95%, 98% for hormonal IUDs, and it can last up to 12 years. However, women barely know that, and they lack reassurance that the method is safe and that they can get pregnant anytime after removing it. The second rationale is, though it is the most popular contraceptive method in Jordan, it is still used as a shorter-term method. Women use IUDs for maybe 3 years, 4 years, and that's it. The discontinuation rate, that we call it like when a woman starts using a method and stops using it, after 1 year for the IUD in Jordan is almost 19%. Third, on the supply side, because if we push for demand, we need to have a response, the service is largely available through trained providers in public, private, and NGO clinics. So we decided to launch an IUD social marketing campaign. Easier said than done. When we discussed the concept with our counterparts, you have a list here, at the Ministry of Health and the Higher Population Council first, because these are the government counterparts, I wish I had pictures of these very skeptical faces in front of us, some even frowning, and saying, well, so you are going on TV, radio, community gathering in such a conservative society to talk about a device that is inserted in women's womb. But as they are also curious and smart people, they asked us how we were going to do that. And we said, together. So we created a campaign technical committee, including stakeholders from the institutions and organizations that are listed here. And we asked them to follow their sense of adventure and take a leap of faith. So we had weekly working sessions with the committee members to go through all the stages of the campaign development. The design, we reviewed each stage of the development, and we ensured also on the supply side with the Ministry of Health that IUDs were there, were stored, and that the doctors and I will tell you after, not even only the doctors were ready for the services, as we were forecasting an increase in demand after the campaign starts. The NGO members were really valuable around this table because they brought interesting insight from the perspective of civil society. And we needed this perspective as, promoting family planning as a basic right. We forget that it's a basic right for families, couples, and women to plan their families, to space their births or limit the size of their families. So they were advocating to have these families access correct information, have quality service, and I can say that they were really allies in some bold, creative decisions we were going to make. The materials, I'm there in the pre-test phase, and the discussion of the campaign strategy during the focus groups also helped revealing potential communication obstacles, and we could shape up effective interventions, especially at the community level. At last here, I would like to say that the value of exchanging and engaging all these counterparts and stakeholders in the co-creation process went beyond just developing campaign ownership. It was also an educational and advocacy process to demonstrate the capacity of social marketing to address most sensitive issues effectively and in a culturally appropriate manner. So, this was too fast. The audience, so who are they? We had secondary review and primary research that informed us on the target groups that you have here in front of you, stage of change. We were mainly using the theory of stages of change here that were mostly between, you go from contemplation, preparation to action. Whereas we had also a market segmentation that provided insight on the specific motivations and obstacles of the target subgroups. We conducted several focus group discussions in both urban and rural areas to explore and identify in depth psychological, sociological, and cultural factors affecting the use of family planning among Jordanian women. We came up with these three segments that I am describing in the coming slides. So let's start with the newlyweds, what we call the newly married. So who are these lovely ladies? They're married, of course. They are under 23 years, and they have no more than one child. They still wish, they want to delay their next pregnancy for at least 3 years. Only 25% use a modern method, and we have 73% who had never used a modern method. This is the definition of potential users we had here. We have to understand that in Jordan, the first thing for a newlywed is to demonstrate fertility within the first few months of marriage. So these couples and these ladies face a lot of pressure from their families, from their community, and from the society, because this is a social norm. They also believe that using a modern method at an early age could lead to losing their fertility. Let me stop here for a second because we have very fresh information from a CAP survey we conducted among 6 governorates in Jordan that informed us that over 70% of all respondents, not only the newlywed, we had all women, believe that a young lady, a young woman should not use any modern method because otherwise she might lose her fertility. However, they still want to know, and they're very interested in knowing about family planning methods. They're here at this segment, at this level, we have a lack of proper knowledge, especially among the youngest crowd. So we move to the active childbearing. And these ladies who are up to 32 years, almost 80% have up to 3 children. But 41% use a modern family planning method, and we still have 44% of non-users ever. These women still face societal pressure to have more children. So you see, it's interesting. They have up to 3 children, but they are not thinking limitation yet. They're still thinking about spacing to the 4th or the 5th. And the preference for male children adds to this pressure. The concern they have is method reliability, health risks in general, especially those related and associated to hormonal methods. Despite these concerns, they appreciate the benefits of spacing. I think here they've acquired some more experience in raising kids, so they understand that it has some benefits on their lifestyle and well-being. They are also pretty much keen on obtaining more information, knowledge, and counseling on family planning methods through their peers. So they want to learn about experience here. In our third segment, so the limiters are beyond, above 32 years, and they have 5 children on average. Actually, despite this high parity, you can see that only half of them use a modern family planning method, and more importantly, almost 1/3 at this stage with disparity never used a modern method. You have to understand that in Jordan, the concept of limiting childbirth is socially not acceptable. We cannot say limiting. We keep saying birth spacing, long-term spacing, but limiting, and I will come back from the religious perspective, is not accepted. The concerns women have is also about health risks. They say pretty much the same, they share pretty much the same issues with the previous segments, notably with the long-term health risks. There is a general concern, though, and I think it's a good awareness, that late pregnancies can have a negative impact on the health of their babies and their own health. They are also aware here of the financial implications of a large family. So, coming after all this analysis, and it was fascinating to discuss this with our counterparts and have them get more, down to the community level and understand the people, we moved to the concept design. So in the concept design, we thought together about the social offering. What were we offering to these women? So we offered them access to a safe and high quality, effective contraceptive method along with high quality service delivery providers from all sectors. The promise of quality services was supported by a seal I was taught to use some kind of, things here to show you. Yeah, that's works. You see my pencil, I hope. Yes. So you can see here that there is this seal of quality family planning. It's small. That is here with like a heart in the middle. And it was advertised, it was displayed on the Providers Clinic and mass media advertised. So we did a branding of providers. The concept of the campaign also didn't stop at the first level of health benefit, but we went beyond to the end benefit related to the family's quality of life, resulting from the mother's improved health, the benefit of the quality time with her family, and also the time for her to be able to work, for example. Because the dilemma here is that women's status is enhanced as mother status. So if we tell them to stop being a mother, basically, or not to be a mother for a long, I'm just being, and given a caricature here, we have to give a trade-off. So how is he going to feel socially and, in her community, recognized, respected if she doesn't keep giving birth to children and showing what a good mother she is? Now, the phase of materials development and pretest. In the creative design, we opted for a feel-good, aspirational tone, and we included, and that's very important, the return to fertility as a key message. Remember the description of the different target segments? Every woman feels and needs to know that she can get pregnant any time in her life, any time, even those who think about not having children anymore. And that's very interesting. It's the psychological reassurance that her status again as a fertile woman is not touched. So we included return to fertility as a key message across all campaign materials, including mass media. The project negotiated reduced prices with a network of private and NGO providers, and we also identified non-monetary barriers such as the embarrassment and the discomfort. We're talking in this webinar about unspoken behaviors because family planning is not to be discussed in public. So it's a sensitive topic, especially with an intimate method such as an IUD. And we knew and we learned that women desire a female provider. So many women were using the private sector to get a better access to female providers there. But in the public sector, we made sure with the Ministry of Health to find female providers, and then we involved midwives. So the Ministry of Health, and it was in terms of policy environment, something very new, the Ministry of Health allowed midwives to provide services and to compensate for the lack of female doctors. I think now we're going to movie time. I hope you got your popcorn and sodas. And I would like you to watch these two TV spots very carefully from your own perspective, from your own cultural background, and how you look at them. What do you think are the groundbreaking elements in these spots?
عائلتك سر سعادتك، ولأنك مقتنعة إنه تنظيم الأسرة خطوة مهمة في الحفاظ على صحتهم وسعادتهم، استخدمي اللولب.
اللولب وسيلة آمنة وفعالة للغاية. هناك الكثير من الكوادر المؤهلة لتقدم لك خدمة تركيب اللولب بجودة عالية في كافة مراكز وعيادات وزارة الصحة وعيادات الجمعية الأردنية لتنظيم وحماية الأسرة وعيادات الأونروا وعيادات القطاع الخاص. لتنظيم أسرتك استخدمي اللولب لأنه آمن وفعال وبتدوم فعاليته لغاية 12 سنة ويمكنك الحمل بعد إزالته.
All right. So this was the first one, and you could see different things. I don't want to influence you, but I would like to hear from you what you found interesting, remarkable, different, or something you were not expecting. This is the second one. No, it's here.
أحلامنا لأولادنا كبيرة مهما كانت الإمكانيات. بعد ما إجت منى قررت أرجع أشتغل، فصار عندي مسؤوليات ما بتتحمل مفاجآت. عشان هيك أنا استخدمت اللولب.
اللولب وسيلة آمنة وفعالة للغاية. المهم إنكم تخططوا وتقرروا شو الأنسب إلكم ولعائلتكم.
وبيوم من الأيام رح أفصل لك يا ماما أحلى فستان تخرج.
لتنظيم أسرتك استخدمي اللولب لأنه آمن وفعال وبدوم فعاليته لغاية 12 سنة.
All right. Do we have some feedback about the spots? Have they explored? No, this is something different. So I will continue. I will just move on and we'll see that afterwards. The implementation phase now. We had an intensive mass media plan that covered TV, radio, and newspapers. And there was, and still is, a large program of household counseling visits that reaches more than 200,000 women in a yearly basis. Women receive referrals to the public health centers and vouchers for private and NGO doctors. The key insight that drove the campaign strategy was that women needed reassurance about the method safety and the effectiveness from a credible source, either a medical provider or a positive peer experience. And we had then doctors who were media trained. This is, you can see the second picture here in the middle. And they volunteered actually to tackle misconceptions, side effect issues, health concerns on TV and radio shows. We also designed community outreach interventions such as edutaining lectures, edutaining standing for educational and entertaining lectures led by a female doctor, and providing opportunity for IUD users among the audience to share their positive experience. And these lectures were gathering on average 150 women. Now we come to the tough part, monitoring and evaluation. We defined behavior change objectives for the campaign that you will see right after this slide. And we had reach indicators for community-based components, as well as also outcome indicators. For example, women who received counseling and were enacted upon a referral or a voucher after an edutaining lecture or a visit were tracked. So we had also, the results I'm going to show you are based on this survey, a post-tracking campaign survey that evaluated the reach, the message recall, and the campaign effectiveness. What were these objectives? So you can see that these objectives are about correcting knowledge, and I'm very cautious here of not saying raising awareness because this is not relevant in Jordan. Women are aware. They know about family planning. They can mention unpromptedly at least one method. But the problem is that they have a lot of misconceptions and wrong knowledge about these methods. So we wanted to make sure that women knew about safety and effectiveness of IUD, the term and the period of protection, and that it did not affect fertility. We had objectives regarding their attitude, and we wanted them also to know where to find the service. And maybe you could notice that in the first TV spot, eventually leading to an increased use of the IUD. The results. And before moving to the results, I would like you to answer a little quiz about this stunning baby. I think he's saying wow, hopefully, and we're moving to the next slide. So, is this baby a boy, a girl, or he says, don't label me with genders? So when does everybody would vote now? You're already having fun, Win, with this.
Yeah, we can tell what kind of audience we have here. And what was the answer? The big answer?
Don't label me with genders, which I agree. But I have a positive discrimination and bias with girls too. I'm sorry for that.
Was it a girl or a boy? What is it?
I wanted the baby to be a girl myself. My next audience win, of course. I'm preaching for my own area.
Good for you. That's correct.
So let's move now to some results. And the winners are: the campaign evaluation outcomes are based on a survey of 800 married women in reproductive age in 3 major governorates in Jordan, Amman, Irbid, and Zarqa, that represent almost 80% of Jordan population. They are based, these results, on unprompted, self-reported benefits as a result of exposure to the campaign. Respondents were prompted with snapshots of the TV spots, the brochures, the newspaper clippings. Those who responded that they have seen at least one of these campaign elements were considered exposed to the campaign. Non-exposed respondents were those who reported they haven't seen any of these campaign elements. And as a note, all the differences you have here are statistically significant between the non-exposed and exposed respondents. So let's look at them a bit more, closely. You can see the bars, the light green and the blue. So what is interesting to me more is the difference between the green and the blue bar. What is catching our eye is the intention to use. And that was a big win in the campaign, is that we really had a big difference in the intention to use between those who were exposed and those who were not exposed to the campaign. The other element for me, that was the agreement that the IUD was very safe. Well, that was great. Maybe there was some telepathy, or I don't know. I will go back to Carl Jung's theory of the collective subconscious. So I think they were communicating somewhere. The 70% of non-exposed is really good. And the 80%, the 83 is even better. The knowing that it was lasting up to 12 years for the protection is also rewarding. There's a little frustration is the agreement that the return to fertility is assured after removing the IUD. This was not up to what we were expecting, so we have to still dig there. Knowing where the service is available was also a big win. Now, coming to the truth point, which is increasing the use of IUD. What we have here is the tracking of IUD insertions at private doctors, those private doctors who are part of members of the project network, and we had above 200 of them, 220 of these doctors. So what we did is, you can see here you have yellow bars and you have blue bars. The yellow, October, November, December, is 2012. The blue is 2013, and the color is wrong for January, because the yellow is supposed to be 2013 and the blue 2014. But we wanted to have a homogeneous aesthetic graph. So here, what you can see is after the campaign started, it started on November 1, 2013. When we compare November 2013 with November 2012, the difference is 36% more IUD insertions, whereas before the campaign, it was 6% more. The drop in January, in December, the 16%, we have a hypothesis that I will share with you. It went up to 40% in January. So in December, it snowed. We had 10 days of heavy snow, like we have today, a heavy flood in Amman. And during this period of time, people stay at home. They just don't leave home. It's not, of course, any rigorous research. It's just like, let's find out someone to blame about this 16%. Now, let's see at the national figures. We received the national statistics from the Ministry of Health, and there is this typical USAID metric. We talk about couples year protection, and I'm sure I will have some question about that. Couples year protection loyally reflects the use of a method. So what you can see here, though it is not possible to affirm causality because at this point for the campaign, because, well, there are some research called RCT, randomized control trials, that give you rigorous connection and causality. But it is important to note that we had no other campaigns on air about the IUD in the previous 2 years, and no major changes were noted in service provision. But you could see that here in red, the campaign started, and this graph shows a clear shift in the declining trend for the IUD. You can also note the stagnation of the other methods, which is also a major concern for not moving, shifting the needle for all modern methods. So can we say that we had an effect at the national level? Well, it seems, but again, we cannot rigorously attribute causality. The learnings. First, if you want campaigns to fly and discuss sensitive topics in a country that is also in a sensitive environment when it comes to population, you have to engage country stakeholders. The country stakeholders have concerns that are very legitimate, and here the concern was basically you're asking Jordanian people to reduce the size of their families, whereas we're having millions coming from countries around that are entering the country. And this is relevant. So we have to make sure they understand that this concerns everybody in the country and is still of benefit to the whole population. The second finding and learning is these stakeholders are not social marketers. So they will look at the process for the campaign, the audiences from their own subjective views and biases. So when you do find pretest and when you broaden the picture and get them the vox populi and tell them, listen, we're not here causing the next protest in the streets, you reduce their resistance and they can be on board with you. Third one, get the doctors out of their clinics and bring them into a community gathering. Put them on stage in front of people. They will interact. They are credible. They will understand what people feel. They will get down from their ivory tower, and this is highly impacting. We did that with doctors, and we did that with the midwives, and we could see the difference in the intention and the knowledge among women when we had this kind of community-based interactions. Last but not least, and this is a call for social marketing advocacy. We are practitioners, and the practitioners have golden opportunities because they can provide tangible results to demonstrate that social marketing is effective and can be applied on the most sensitive issues that people can be at first reluctant to go for. So thank you very much. I hope it was not too long, and I'm looking forward to your questions. Turning it over to you, Jay and Tamara.
Well, thank you very much, Huda. That was a really engaging and interesting presentation on all the processes that you had to go through to present such a campaign, and doing it in a way that was sensitive and appropriate for the culture that you were doing it in and their values. And all the engagement with the stakeholders. So I found that very engaging and interesting, and I'm sure our audience did as well. And so we can now open up. We've got time for questions and answers, and Jay will be moderating those. Jay.
Thank you. And I'm going to do something very unusual today because we have a smaller group. I'm going to start with a question from the chairperson rather than one of the regular participants. And the question is, were unmarried women considered as a target audience?
Thank you, Wim. Very clear answer, no. We already had some hard time pushing for these innovative approaches among married women, not to add the burden of, raising susceptibilities, talking about unmarried women. We are in a country where premarital sex is not considered, it's not an option. So we could not in our communication target unmarried women when we come to using methods. Now, I will give you the other part of the answer is that currently under JCAP project, we are targeting youth, and in the definition of youth we have here are unmarried young people, but we're talking about premarital counseling, we're talking about preconception care, so it's different. And even though I just had some feedback with an intervention with an NGO here among youth in universities, and I'm using a French expression, we're walking on eggs. So we have to be really careful that the eggs don't break. And we had some feedback and some backlash, I can say that, about the training modules, TOT, and some concepts that we're talking about that were not accepted because they felt it was too much explicit about modern methods and about intercourse.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Saud. Have they explored targeting the male partner with the communication instead of the women, as they could be the behavior drivers?
Thank you. That's also a great question. What we discovered through research is that men are involved in the communication. There is a large level of couple dialogue, but they are involved to a certain stage. Men will discuss with their wives the principle of using family planning. When it comes to what method, it's none of their business. You see, so we could have men, and we worked engaging men, especially in the household visits whenever we could, because men were outside of the house during the time of the visits. But we tried to engage men as much as possible to have them as, because they are influencers, they are strong influencers, but at least engage them on the principle that yes, we want to practice, we want to use family planning for birth spacing. We're now under JCAP pushing more into the social norm of limiting, and supporting his wife for choosing a method. Let me give you an interesting anecdotal information. We had some focus groups with men, and we were talking traditional method withdrawal, because withdrawal is in demands under man control. And we had very interesting answers from some men who said, well, but this is my way to be in control because I don't trust my wife. I know my mother and her mother will influence her to have a fifth kid where I cannot afford it. That was gold. So it was like, okay, it means that they are in principle they're not really what we think, like men will push for more children and so forth. No, really we discovered it's mostly a women issue. So men, when it comes to the method itself, it's still an area to explore. They feel like it's not their affair.
Thank you. Two terms I'd like some clarification of, please. I'll give you both of them. Claire Radmeyer asks, can you please explain what OCP is? And the other one you mentioned yourself, and we haven't come back to that, that's the whole concept of couples year protection.
Okay. Hi, Claire. It's nice to have you there. OCP is oral contraceptive pills. And really, I apologize. Demographers have a lot of jargon and acronyms in everything we say. So the couple years protection is, what is it? It's the estimated protection provided by contraceptive methods during a 1 year period. It's based upon the volume of all contraceptives that are sold or distributed free of charge during that period. And it's calculated by multiplying the quantity of each method distributed by a conversion factor. Let me make it simple. When we take the IUD, and we talk of the copper T IUD because you have other IUDs that can last less or longer, the couple year protection per IUD inserted is 4.6, which means when I have a figure of one IUD inserted, I can consider it's 4.6 couples year protection. And it considers not only, because it takes into consideration a lot of factors like the failure rates, the wastage. It's a factor, conversion factor, that is trying to be as closer to reality as possible. I think there is another question from Claire.
Great.
Yeah? Does this answer? If it's not, I can go further.
Oh, well, first of all, you did answer OCP, did you?
Yes, I did. Oral contraceptive pills.
Okay, just checking on that. I was reading a question at the time, I guess. So her second question is, can you talk about how you would approach a situation where health service delivery is not strong?
Well, that's, as marketers, like not like business or social marketing, we still go back to the 4 Ps, right? And if the P of product is not there, or the S of service is not there, there will be something definitely missing in the equation. And I think it would be very difficult to raise expectations, to generate demand, and drive women to any place where they are supposed to get the product or the service and not find it. I think it's really a basic element to consider. I'm trying to brainstorm what you could do is maybe prepare to the concept, to the practice, talking about family planning benefits in terms of health benefits and so forth, but at some point you will come to the use. And I think in this situation, what would you promote except abstinence if the woman cannot get a method? That's the only question I would have.
In terms of impacts of the program, you talked about actual changes in sales. Have you seen any changes in birth rate yet? Excuse me, not sales, but use of IUDs. Have you seen any corresponding changes in birth rate?
You mean the total fertility rate?
Sure.
Yeah. So total fertility rate is a national indicator that comes through large national surveys. Maybe you're familiar with the DHS, Demographic Health Surveys. The last one we had was in 2012. We're supposed to have one in 2017. So it's every 5 years. So we don't have now any measure of the total fertility rate. But we have a sense that it's still stagnant. The results we obtained showed that pushing and building in-depth, well-built campaigns can shift the needle. But you feel like there is this concrete ceiling there that has to be crushed. And it's taken more than just one campaign. It's taken much more. It's a long run, more in-depth, and it requires also a lot of work in advocacy. It's not only about demand generation. It requires a lot of work on advocacy and social norms change, and this is what we're working on under JCAP. The norm of having minimum, the ideal number of children here is 4. This is based on the last DHS. When you ask women about what would be your ideal number of children, it's 4. So this is based on a very rooted social norm. And boys. Women will go and keep on having children until they have boys. So this is another area that we have to tackle.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, the next question is, in immunization programs, we track and investigate adverse events. So did your program track adverse events with IUDs, like pelvic inflammatory disease?
Yes, there is. Women who use IUDs are tracked through their medical records from their providers. The best tracking we can have is through the Ministry of Health. Private doctors will not be keen on sharing their records, but they can tell us. And we know that it's the first method in Jordan. It's pretty much, as I told, it's the most popular method, and the training and the level of performance at the doctor's level is good, is pretty high. However, there is still, yes, some risk-related, but the problem is women attribute the pelvic inflammation or whatever other problem she could have with an IUD to the IUD, whereas the problem is the inflammation is already there. The infection is already there and was not diagnosed. So again, this is part of the counseling, and it's part of the doctor's performance to make sure that the IUD is inserted into a healthy pelvic, in a healthy manner.
Thank you, Huda. Tamara asks about next steps. What's next for this program?
So SHOPS, the follow-on SHOPS project was designed to cover both service delivery and demand generation. Now I'm currently in the JCAP project that is tackling the behavior change, social norm change, policy and advocacy for family planning. And the service delivery part is coming soon with a project that will will start in few months, USAID-funded project for service delivery to continue training doctors, assuring quality, making sure that these problems or adverse events, as Wynn says, do not happen. On our side for JCAP, we are getting into the difficult, we identified the gaps and the difficult parts that we have to dig in, like social norm again, and it might not seem that difficult when we say limiting, but it is here. So we're finding ways to pass the message and change the norms related to family size. And we're also tackling the very, very difficult segment of the newlyweds, because this is where it all starts. We want to make sure that the newlyweds space their first births and start planning right at this time, because they are the most vulnerable segment to the influence of social norms.
Okay, we have a question from Claire. Another question from Claire. You spoke about unprompted responses under M&E. Can you describe this process, please?
Yes. The questions were asked, when we say unprompted, it's like, what were the benefits, or what message did you recall, without prompting with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the answers you had, let me go back if you want to them here. So it was, we had these answers from people who were exposed to the campaign and those who were categorized as non-exposed to the campaign. And we could see that here when they say the IUD is very safe and it was unprompted, it means it came out from the respondent without proposing it as a response. And it's part of the post-tracking survey. It's part of all the questions that were asked.
I hope that answers your question, Claire. If you have wish any further clarification on that, just type that in and we'll get some more for you. I have another question here. How influential a factor was religion in a woman's family planning relative to other factors?
Okay, I think it's one of the most interesting factors. A lot of work has been done through USAID support on gaining religious support to family planning. And I can say that it was successful. The religious leaders support family planning. They consider it as religiously acceptable. Now, the restrictions are, family planning is about temporary methods. No definite methods can be allowed, like tubal ligation. If people are familiar with this, tubal ligations can be permanent. So permanent methods are not considered religiously acceptable. And when we come to the religious perspective and talk to religious leaders, they are the one not even raising a red flag, but really like raising two hands and saying, you never talk about limiting number of children. This is in the hands of God. We cannot say limiting. But in Islam, spacing births is fine. So the point we have is that we have support. Religious leaders are supportive about family planning and the concept of birth spacing. However, we are now under JCAP in the time of trying to get their support for changing the social norms, and it means talking about smaller family size. And it's still, yes, there are still very strong stakeholders and influencers on that area, on that point.
Okay, well, I think we're going to have to wrap it up to stay on time. Thanks very much, Huda. We'll move on then to some final housekeeping details. As you leave the webinar today, please do remember to fill out the evaluation. You may have done so before, but we'd like to know, how did we do today? And we're always trying to find ways to improve. So please let us know. And the next webinar in our series is The Donor is in the Details, the common ground between social marketing and donor behavior with Lucia Barros. That's in January 2016, and registration is already open for that. And finally, thanks to Wynn, who's helped make these webinars an important part of ISMA's member offering. Wynn, over to you.
Well, thanks, Jay. It's been a pleasure to be part of this webinar today. You make it seem so easy, but I know that you spent a lot of time organizing this program, and we really appreciate it, all of us. Huda, thank you so much for a fascinating glimpse into tackling unspoken behaviors using co-creation to overcome cultural barriers to family planning in Jordan. We learned a lot today, things that we normally wouldn't know about, and it gave us great insight into the power of social marketing programs as well. And I hope we can have you back for another webinar in our future webinar series. And to our members and participants in today's webinar, thank you for your continued support and participation. We hope to see you at the next webinar, Donor in the Details, of January 2016. And until then, keep visiting the ISMA website, share your events on our calendar, exchange resources and jobs, and keep up with our Career Center. This is the International Social Marketing Association. We now conclude today's webinar.